Hopefully we won't be disturbed. No, guys, it was great. I was really looking forward to this one because it's summing up the topic that I had talked to you last week. And that was about, we actually see Christ in the storms. We used the example of Peter as he looked away from Christ. He looked away, he started sinking. But I wanted to talk about someone that actually, in the trial, in the storm, he looked towards God for the full time. And that man is Daniel. Now, what we know of Daniel is that he was a slave brought in from Israel. He was also a very, very handsome guy. He was one of the chosen men of the captives. We also know him because he has friends named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But one thing that we never really look at a lot is that he was a man of faith. That he had his eyes set on God. And we know that in Daniel 6, Daniel is given a very, very difficult decision. It is when the Medes and Persians finally take over the Babylonian Empire. If you recall this, in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, there is a statue with a gold head, and then there's a silver chest area. Well, we know that the silver was the Medes and the Persians, and that was that empire that was going to take over the Babylonians. Well, we know that King Darius is in charge of the Medes and Persians. And we know that Darius puts 3 people in charge. And one of those people in charge was Daniel. In the story, Daniel's winning favor. Even Darius was even thinking about putting him in charge of the country, the whole empire itself. Well, that got some people really crabby. And that was known as the princes, the people that were like the governors of the empire. So they get together and they say, how are we going to get Daniel out of the picture? Well, Daniel was a man had a great personality. He was pretty much flawless in many respects. And he had a fantastic character. Well, they said, well, how does he get all this? Well, there was only one thing they could tie. It was that he had a faith in God. So they get together and they're like, wait a minute, his only thing is that he is following God. What if we could turn that against him? So they look and they put a plot, and they go to the king and they go to Darius and they say, Darius, live forever. And then they present a plan before him. And Darius goes along with it. And that was the plan that everybody should worship Darius, the king. I mean, come on. A king who rules an empire, he was looked at as a god himself. So, they go and present this thing. They flatter him. He agrees to it. He signs a decree. But there was a response that Daniel had. This storm of the possibility of dying because of not worshiping Darius, he looked at it in a whole new aspect. And I want to read to you his response in Daniel 6. And it says in Daniel 6:19, now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home in his upper room with his windows open towards Jerusalem. He knelt down on his knees 3 times that day and praised and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days. His response to this decree that you either worship Darius or you die, he went up to his house when he knew what was happening, what could happen. He went up to his house, and as he did since his youth, he goes into his house and not just shut the door, he opened his windows in public, and he totally just went and faced Jerusalem, which is a very interesting thing, is that he faced the city where God dwelt, the temple. He faced God himself. He wanted to put his focus all on God. He wanted that to be his main focus. We know at the end of the story that Daniel got caught, got tried, got thrown in the lion's den. We know that God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths. And we know that the next day Darius proclaimed that everybody worships the God of Daniel. As we face storms, we face things in our lives, as Christians, we are going to have that happen. We're going to be asked questions. Why do you believe what you believe? Told that we can't pray in public schools. We can't pray and speak our faith out. But guys, what is going to be our focus? Are we going to look and say, okay, I'm going to go and cower? Am I going to go and run? I'm not going to do this because I'm told I can't? Or are we going to have the focus on Christ so much that we'll be looking towards him and not worry about the consequences? We will face that storm, but we'll be facing it by looking completely on Christ. Guys, that's my challenge. And as I am in this pavilion, I'm reminded of the same den that Daniel went in. It's kind of dark in here. It's darker at night, believe me. He was in a confined space. And that he went on faith, and that God was going to get him through this. So shall we continue in life by keeping our focus on Christ. See you next week.